sharing data with the Human Rights Campaign, a nonprofit that tracks corporate LGBTQ policies. Third-party merchants will no longer be able to sell some LGBTQ themed items such as chest binders on walmart.com that could be marketed to children. It will no longer use the terms DEI and Latinx in official communications, and Walmart will not renew the Center for Racial Equity, the philanthropic initiative that its CEO announced in 2020. When that agreement expires next year, the CEO had committed $100 million to that Center for Racial Equity to address what he calls systemic racism following the murder of George Floyd. Well, all of that has changed. As a result, the one of the nation's largest employers is leading the way for other companies to do the same thing. And President Joe Biden announced today that Israel and Lebanon's Iran-backed militia Hezbollah had agreed to a United States brokered ceasefire. In addition to widening the risk of a regional war, the escalated tensions and back and forth strikes over the last year have killed thousands of people and displaced more than 1 million. Now, under this new deal, which is set to go into effect at 4 a.m. local time, the fighting at the Israel-Lebanese border will end. Biden said this as he outlined the ceasefire, which he said was designed to be a permanent solution to ending the war in Israel. And President-elect Donald Trump's vow to use his first day in office to impose heavy tariffs on products from Canada, Mexico, and China reverberated around the globe today. President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico signaled that her country was prepared to respond with retaliatory tariffs of its own. And the auto industry depends heavily on manufacturing and parts from Mexico and Canada, and any tariffs would quickly affect consumers. The list of popular vehicles made in those countries is long, and all of those vehicles and many others will become significantly more expensive to consumers if Trump follows through on his threat to impose tariffs. And Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico hit back at President Trump's vow to impose 25% tariffs, saying that her country was prepared to respond and that raising tariffs would not do anything to curb illegal migration or the consumption of illicit drugs in the U.S., which have been the hallmark of Donald Trump's arguments as to why tariffs were necessary. And the Biden administration, in one of its last major policy directives proposed today that Medicare and Medicaid cover obesity medications, a costly and probably popular move that the Trump administration would need to endorse to become official. Some say Robert F. Kennedy, if he becomes the Health and Human Services cabinet chair, he's likely to oppose the efforts to make weight loss medication more available through Medicare and Medicaid. And among aides, confidants, and hanger-ons of Donald Trump, there's always been an intense fight to get close to the boss, with advisors clawing over each other to win favor and influence Donald Trump. But little in Trump world compares to the efforts of Boris Epstein. The Washington Post is reporting that Epstein, a long-term lobbyist who has served as a key advisor to Trump, has been asking potential candidates for monthly consulting fees. Yes, pay for play, in exchange for his personal recommendation that they be appointed to a cabinet position. Well, those in the Trump world says there is no room for pay to play as it relates to his selection of cabinet members. And Don Jr. weighed in, saying that Epstein is probably a goner after reports leaked that he was, in fact, trying to collect money from those who desire to be in the Trump cabinet. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by Dr. Larry Walker. He's a professor at the University of Central Florida And Christopher Walton, he's a delegate, former delegate to the DNC and former chair of the Milwaukee Democratic Party. Christopher is in DC, and yesterday we spent a lot of time talking about the remaking of the Democratic National Committee. So I'm glad Chris is here. Maybe he has some inside info, some tea on what's happening at the DNC and who's likely to emerge in February as the new chair, and what is that party going to, what is the Democratic Party that is going to look like. Alvin Tillery, a pollster, was on the show yesterday and said that the party needed to remake itself. It needed to become hyper focused on minorities of communities of color, particularly Black voters, and that one of the reasons we lost so badly this month is because Black voters, particularly those he calls swing voters, voters in swing states, and irregular voters were not targeted, he says, sufficiently. Now, lots of folks disagree with that. A lot of finger pointing still going on in terms of what happened in the election. David Plouffe has been on some podcasts saying that, quite frankly, there just wasn't enough time. He's pushing back on a critique from progressives that the courting of Liz Cheney and Republicans was also one of the reasons for the loss. It alienated, according to some progressives, the base. David Plouffe says no, that was necessary to build the kind of coalition that was needed. There's also some reports that, Joe Biden is to blame, that his team knew early on that if he stayed on the ticket, that Trump would win 400, according to some electoral college votes. And so a lot of fingers being pointed at Joe Biden as the reason for the loss, saying he should have never run in the first place, that he knew his numbers were weak. So I'm glad Chris is here because maybe he can help us make sense of some of these reports that are coming out, again, trying to make sense of how we lost not just the presidency, but the House and the Senate. And in hour two, you know what we do. We go deep, we dig behind those headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, you may have been the subject of a cyber attack. It might have happened to your email, may have happened to some of your social media accounts. We've all gotten these strange direct messages from folks saying they're stranded in other countries and they need money. They need it immediately. Folks saying they're even incarcerated and need you to come pay their bill. Folks have, talked about their personal information being exposed, people stealing their identities, photographs that they've taken on their phones being disseminated to folks. So all kinds of cyber issues impact not just individuals, but obviously businesses and even our federal government. In fact, the number of cyber attacks has almost doubled in the past 5 years, averaging, get this, almost 1 million. That is 758,000 annual cyber attacks. This is according to the FBI Internet Criminal Complaint Center. And they say so many attacks don't even get reported. So that number could be way over 1 million, definitely over that 758,000. Again, these are just the cases that are reported to some kind of law enforcement and make their way to the FBI's database. This issue is so large, so huge, that it's going to be one of the looming issues that Donald Trump and his administration has to deal with when he takes office in January. In fact, senators and congressional leaders have summons to the Capitol when they return from their break on December 4th, a group of telecom executives to talk about how they are protecting companies and consumers from these cyber attacks, because they are having a very, very serious and negative impact on individuals as well as corporations, and of course the threat of China and some other hostile country getting information to our nuclear codes. And so much classified information is not just something that happens in a sci-fi movie, but it's something that's really, really top of the mind for these experts. So we're going to go deep on cybersecurity. I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do to protect your identity and protect the information, all the information that we are regularly putting out into the universe when we shop online, when we use our credit card online, when we sign up to get someone's newsletter, we go to a website to shop around. So many ways in which we make our information, our personal information, available to those, many of whom mean us no good. So Anthony Perry is here. He's the director of cybersecurity at a Fortune 500 company. He's been working on this and he knows how dangerous a situation we find ourselves as it relates to cybersecurity. And also, Andre Brock is here. He's our resident media and social media expert from Georgia Institute of Technology, because so much of these data breaches occur online when people are, again, engaging on social media. So make sure you stick around for hour two if you have concerns about how to protect yourself from a cybersecurity attack. Well, before I bring on my guests, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. Hell has no fury like an angry, old, privileged white man that has to admit that he lost anything to a Black woman, and definitely not lost to two Black women. Well, that's what is on full display with Rudy Giuliani, old, angry, privileged white man, just showing out in the most shameful way in federal court. Now, remember, Rudy Giuliani was once a very famed attorney. He's been disbarred from DC and maybe even other states, but he was once thought of as one of the nation's leading attorneys. He's a former U.S. prosecutor. He is also, as we know, one of the most famous mayors, thought to be a shoe-in for president. Well, we've watched his career tumble, and we've watched him make a big fool of himself as he's tried to defend Donald Trump on so many levels. I mean, we can think back to the press conference with the hair dye rolling down his face. I mean, there's so many examples of ways in which he's just embarrassed himself. Well, he did it again today, and that's when he was in court before a bankruptcy court judge. This is that $146 million defamation judgment that two Black women, poll workers in the state of Georgia, got against him. And because he has not complied with the judge's order, that's Judge Lewis Lyman, that he turn over his assets to these two women, he keeps having to show up in court and try to explain to the court how come he somehow is above the law, and how come he doesn't have to comply with the court's order to turn over his assets. Well, today, reports are that he was screaming at the judge, that he was belligerent, that his new lawyer, because his old lawyer has dumped him, that his new lawyer was trying to buy more time, asking for a continuance of a January trial that's set, because he says he has to be at inaugural events related to Donald Trump's inauguration that's happening in January. So again, he doesn't think he has to comply with the law. And he thinks he should get a break from appearing in court because he's got some social activities that he would like to attend. Well, thankfully, this judge wasn't having it. And the judge has been very clear that Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss are deserving of the personal items that he owes them, including his Manhattan co-op, his apartment. Apparently, he's turned over this vintage Mercedes, even though he hasn't given them the title to the car. And the judge had to remind him, what's the value of a car if you don't have the title? But again, this privileged, old, has-been white man in court doing the unthinkable. Some would say should have been held in contempt, should have been put in handcuffs and arrested by this judge, because he continues to just defy the judge's order of turning over his assets. So we're going to continue to watch this case. Hopefully by January, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss get the justice that they deserve. But I can only imagine that Rudy Giuliani, in this moment that his BFF, Donald Trump, has won, is believing that somehow Donald Trump will make this case go away, that he won't ever have to be held accountable. And we know that's a real possibility. I wish I could sit here as a civil rights lawyer and tell you that would never happen. But given what we saw yesterday happen in federal court when Trump's own cases were dismissed, I would not be surprised if there's not some shenanigans that happen that allow Rudy Giuliani to avoid the accountability that he owes Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. But again, shame on you, Rudy Giuliani. Grow up, 80-something-year-old man, acting like a petulant child, defying court orders, and really embarrassing himself and making a mockery of our entire legal system. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Environmental justice is racial justice. Environmental justice is social justice. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide cleans better than the leading competitive free detergent, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues.
Plus, Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
There are Black Friday deals, and then there are Kohl's Black Friday deals. Where else can you get 40% off Levi's, up to 50% off Sephora fragrances, and home favorites for under $10, all in the same place? And it gets better. You can score extra Kohl's cash with $15 earned for every $50 spent. Get 15% off some of your finds, and save even more with limited time doorbusters, like 50% off toys. Select styles. Offers end November 29th. Coupons do not apply to Levi's and toys. Coupons and Kohl's cash do not apply to Sephora. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Christopher Walton, former chair of the Milwaukee Democratic Party and a delegate to the DNC, is joining us, and so is Dr. Larry Walker, professor at the University of Central Florida. So, Chris, we know you are in D.C., and one thing that happened today, Jen O'Malley, other top Harris campaign officials, David Plouffe, Quentin Folks, and Stephanie Cutter, all went on Pod Save America for their first interview since President-elect Donald Trump's victory 3 weeks ago. And they are, I don't know, and I get your opinion on what kind of tour this is. I don't, some kind of mea culpa apology, or we're still alive, give us more business tour. I'm not sure what it is. But they're fighting back on this narrative that Kamala Harris was afraid to do interviews. She didn't do enough interviews. She was afraid to go on Joe Rogan. We know that there are folks that believe that her failure to go on Joe Rogan was a major mistake. But you're in D.C. What are you hearing from these former top Harris officials? Why are they now going on these interviews? And what do you make of what they have said on this Save America podcast? Pod Save America, I guess is what it's called.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the holiday drinking has begun a little early this year across the Democratic Party world. It is, right now it's the time of backbiting. Everybody is saying what should have been done. It's so many we got a whole NFL full of Monday morning quarterbacks at this point right now. What the situation is, we had 107 days to try to turn around a situation. Looked like we were about to lose about 400 electoral votes, and we ended up losing by, we ended up losing at 226. So just like one less than Hillary Clinton had in 2016. We got some soul searching to do. One thing I need us to do as a Democratic Party, though, is also shut up and relax. Listen for a minute. Take a break. Enjoy the holidays. Let's figure this out next year. Because the way we're responding to a 1.5% defeat, we lost by 1.5 points. They lost by 4.5 points last time around. They said, yeah, let's run this back. Let's do this again. I think we can take a minute to breathe, figure out what we need to do better, and come back. We'll be back in 26. We'll be back in 25. We have those governor's races in Virginia and in New Jersey. We have a state Supreme Court race here in Wisconsin. We got a moment. Everybody relax. The election was literally about 2.5 weeks ago.
What do you make, Dr. Walker, of this top campaign officials going collectively on this podcast? And presumably they're going to do more interviews. And, they're together. There's Dylan and David Plouffe and Quentin Folks and Stephanie Cutter. Those were the brain trusts, people would say, of the campaign. And obviously, when you lose, the brain trust wants to go out and justify the loss and make sure they're not getting blamed. All these people need to work again. They need to be hired by other campaigns again. But, Chris says now is not the time. Go, buy a turkey and chill out. What do you make of the timing of this? I know we may be having some technical problems with Dr. Larry. Maybe is he unmuted? Dr. Larry, are you unmuted? Okay, well, we'll try to work that out as Dr. Larry is getting his audio back. Chris, you are in DC.
Correct.
And is anyone taking your advice? It doesn't look like it. If you read the paper every day, it doesn't look like folks are chilling out. It looks like people are rushing to judgment. And there's also this big DNC vote coming up in February. What are you hearing about that? Because that's also really important.
It's still early stages on the chair race. Of course, we just found out what the election day itself will be for chair. February 1st, we'll all be back out here in DC to have a nice, good family reunion and fight. But what we're going to do is we're going to get the good candidates. There's still candidates getting in the race. I have a favorite of my own that I'm looking forward to hopefully jumping in the race when I'll be supporting. But whomever is there, we're going to be having forums to actually discuss what you want to do. How do you want to see this party going forward? What do you want to see the DNC look like in 2025, 6, 7, 8? This next DNC chair is going to be in charge of putting together the convention in 28. They're going to be in charge of setting the primary calendar in 28. Making sure all of those primary candidates that will be able to run. We got a moment, folks. Take a beat. Enjoy your family. We ain't seen them all year. Let's take a minute. We have our ideas. We all know we could have won this today. Just take a second.
Yeah, what do you think? I think you're back, Dr. Larry, about this Harris Brain Trust going on this media tour, it looks like. Think it's a good idea, not a great idea?
I mean, this is typically what happens when you're in a campaign that doesn't win. This always happens. Particularly when you talk about, losing the presidency. There's these people have gotten hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars in terms of consulting fees and other connections that they have various other entities that they're connecting to. And so obviously they're worried about their reputations, but it's really interesting is I don't hear anyone asking Black women about why the election didn't win the election. And listen, I think several weeks ago, I think one of the conversations we had about the strategy that the Harris campaign made, and I think I said this on your show, was in terms of putting Liz Cheney out there so much. And I had wondered aloud if that was going to be a really effective tool compared to really, focusing on Black and other minoritized communities. And we realized they really should have spent more time and effort, particularly these white consulting houses, in terms of focusing on, particularly Black communities in a lot of these battleground states. But, Areva, like I said, this always happens in terms of people, covering themselves in terms of going out and explaining what happened. But the reality is that the election was lost because of the intersection of racism, sexism, and misinformation. That's it. Either one of those or all three of those threads played the primary role in why this election turned out the way it is. And based on the conversation we're going to have in the next half an hour or so, we're about to feel the impact of that in the several weeks.
And it's so interesting because as much as, folks on this show say that, Chris, that is not what we're hearing from, the white consultant class. Folks seem to not want to embrace that. And there's a real fear, Chris, hopefully while folks are chilling out, like you said, that, they'll reflect on that, because if we don't embrace that, if we continue to believe this was about the price of eggs, then I don't know how we put forth a strategy if we've not yet honestly assessed what the problem is. It's like you're trying to stop drinking as an alcoholic, but yet you haven't acknowledged that you're an alcoholic. So I hope that in this reflection moment that the donor class, the dim elites, whoever the brain trust is willing to have that very honest conversation. And we know right now, and we're going to talk about this on the other side, when we look at what Walmart has just done and other companies, having that conversation about racism, it's not a popular conversation right now. Many folks don't want to have it. And companies like Walmart are saying, we are forbidding you from even engaging in that conversation. So when we come forward, we're going to talk more about what Walmart is doing and Donald Trump's tariffs that he promised. He is, according to what he said today, going to move forward with tariffs that could devastate the auto industry and could cause consumer prices to be out the stratosphere. Stick around, more to come. KBLA Talk 1580.
Right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. A white Florida woman, Susan Lorenz, was sentenced to 25 years for fatally shooting her black neighbor, A.J. Owens, in June 2023. Owens, a mother of 4, confronted Lorenz over a dispute involving her children. The judge called the shooting unnecessary, noting Lorenz had already called police and was safe. Despite the recent rain, Black Mayor Eric Adams is still urging New Yorkers to continue to cut back on their water usage. Adams says the drought warning continues despite the rain late last week and rain in the forecast for later in the week. The Thanksgiving travel rush is in full swing, with AAA predicting about 80 million people will venture at least 50 miles from home between now and next Monday. And Queen Latifah will take on the hosting duties for this year's edition of the Kennedy Center Honors. Organizers announced that the award-winning actress and musician will host the 47th annual ceremony on December 8th. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Chatsworth crash remains a huge mess. 118 westbound past Topanga Canyon. 3 left lanes are blocked. And delays are loading up all the way out of Porter Ranch from Porter Ranch Drive. The eastbound side of the 118 also slow moving from DeSoto Avenue. And that drive remains slow all the way through Porter Ranch. It opens up once you make your way past Reseda Boulevard. Now let's check out the Cajon Pass. It's just been a terrible drive for about the past 24 hours. And South 15 remains slow out of Hesperia from the 395. Very heavy ahead all the way to Cleghorn. Northbound delays off of the 210 freeway traveling back to the 138.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Blindster is a family-run business that began in 2010, and we've sold millions of custom blinds, shades, and shutters and received over 100,000 five-star reviews. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Every player on the Dodgers roster will receive a check or deposit for $477,000. That's the player's share of the $46 million the Dodgers will receive today from Major League Baseball's postseason revenue earnings. The Dodgers World Series championship resulted in a nice holiday bonus for the players. Tonight is the 3rd G League game for Bronny James with the South Bay Lakers. South Bay plays the San Diego Clippers at 7 p.m. at the UCLA Health Training Center in El Segundo. The stats for LeBron's son in his first 2 G League games are not impressive. Bronny is averaging 28.5 minutes, 5 points, 2.5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 turnovers, and he's shooting only 21%. Despite a 2-game losing streak, the Lakers go into tonight's game in Phoenix with the 4th best record in the Western Conference at 10-6. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Add confidence to every holiday adventure and get it done with a rugged and capable Chevy truck or SUV. Find your red tag. Get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select popular Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Silverado, Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $2,860 for up to $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 22.2%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take me to delivery by 12/2/24.
Did you know that streaming music, ebooks, audiobooks, movies, and more is available for free from the Los Angeles Public Library? With your library card, you can access the latest music and movies, audiobooks and ebooks, graphic novels, comic books, magazines, and more. If you don't have a library card and live in the city of Los Angeles, you can get a digital card online for free. Check it out at lapl.org/emedia. That's lapl.org/emedia.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has worksource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Unmute.
We are back, and in this hour, Dr. Larry Walker and Christopher Walton are joining me. And in hour 2, we're going to be talking to some cybersecurity experts. We all have been concerned, I'm sure, maybe you've even been the subject of a cyber attack. We're going to talk about how we protect ourselves, particularly now that we're going into the holidays and identity theft is likely to be on the rise. But let's go back to this conversation about having an honest conversation, Christopher, about why the election was lost. Dr. Walker said we got to talk about racism. We got to talk about misogyny. But Walmart just said they are not even going to use the terms DEI and Latinx. I don't know who that offends in official communications. Obviously, Chris, there is a race by corporate CEOs to get to Donald Trump. The CEO, billionaire of the LA Times, tweeted out a couple of days ago how impressed he was with the choices that Donald Trump had made to be over the nation's health. One of those choices being Dr. Oz. Like, really? Are you really impressed with that? Or is this just another effort of a billionaire trying to curry favor with Donald Trump? But if Walmart leaders and others are, in that line to kiss the ring, that means that we're going to have some significant losses along, the diversity, equity, inclusion, gains that we made after George Floyd's murder.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're headed to. We're going to have some serious losses on these issues. This incoming administration has made it very clear that they are not an ally of issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you look at the cabinet alone, you can see he only found one black job he could really appoint. And that's the same one he appointed last time, housing and urban development. So it's not exactly a ringing endorsement of, I believe black people can do important things. Or the fact that when you have the nominee, the DNI designate saying, oh, how about I don't get a DNI pilot on my flight to DC? Mind you, she's a Hawaiian woman, so I don't know where her head is. But
now who made that statement? I didn't hear that.
Tulsi Gabbard. Oh, so I hope I don't have a DEI pilot. Okay. I don't understand the mental gymnastics people had to go through a couple Tuesdays ago to think it was a good idea to vote for Donald Trump. But here we are, and we are in the explore and discover phase of America right now, because we are about to learn a lot about our decisions and how important and how powerful they can be.
So, Dr. Walker, the CEO of Walmart committed $100 million to the Center for Racial Equity. He was going to be all in bullish on addressing systemic racism. Now the center's closing, presumably the money, I'm sure $100 million was never spent. And you can't even use the terms DEI and Latinx in official communications. So basically you got to whisper it, in the lunchroom someplace, but you can't say it out loud. You can't say it in an email, And if this is Walmart, one of the largest box stores in the nation, one of the biggest employers in the country, I mean, this is pretty scary stuff.
Yeah. So what's happening is individuals and corporations are censoring before, the administration takes place. So this is just, and I think I said a couple weeks ago, I'm reading a book on authoritarianism, and everything that we've seen over the last couple of weeks and we'll see over the next couple of years is consistent with what has happened in Europe and South America and various other countries in terms of authoritarianism. Oftentimes, citizens, some voters, walk right into it, and before it's too, by the time it's too late, they realize that they've lost a lot. Other thing I want to highlight, Areva, is that there are a lot of members of the Walton family who support, were quite, strong allies of the Republican Party. So I'm not totally surprised that Walmart is bowing out, because I'm quite sure.
No, Walmart clearly has never been some bastion of liberalism. They've had all kinds of issues with labor unions and wages and their treatment of minority populations. But I guess I'm saying, when you start getting big companies like that saying you can't even utter the words DEI, and we know, what your governor in Florida is doing in terms of, dismantling a whole, field of study, sociology, it just looks like we're going to be in for a really rough ride over the next 4 years.
Yeah, listen, I'm correct, Chris. I'll just real quickly. I've had people call me and talk to me and have wanted me to reassure them about everything's going to be fine. And I'm like, look, it's not going to be fine. It's not. There are no guardrails. I mean, There's nothing. Listen, you certainly as Black people, and I know Black women in particular, every Black woman I talk to said they are taking they're taking a break. So, and Black women, I have said this consistently, and I know Chris has said this on the show. Black women are the backbone of democracy, and so we have some serious troubles ahead of us the next couple of years. I know we're going to talk about the tariffs, but this overall, this is one of those things. Be careful what you wish for.
Well, I'm glad you're being honest with people, and you're not just, trying to assuage their fears. You're letting them know, no, this is not going to be okay. And when you see Walmart coming out with this pronouncement, it gives, permission to so many other companies to do that. And that makes it harder for, minority candidates to be recruited, to be hired, to be retained. It just makes it all the more difficult for that to happen. Yeah, we are going to talk about tariffs because someone on the show told us right after the election that tariff was one of the most Googled words after Trump won. People didn't understand what tariffs were, and now Trump is promising tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. And then, Chris, the auto unions, and we know there were union leaders who were all in for Donald Trump. And they know what tariffs are. Union leaders are very well versed in tariffs and how harmful they can be and what that would mean if, 25% tariffs on a country like Mexico, where so many of the auto parts come from, what the cost of a car will be if this happens. So, I mean, what do you make of some of these leaders who are now all shocked? Like, oh my God, he told us.
I've always been of the thought process, there's no education in the second kick of a mule. Well, we just got kicked again, and we decided to go and get this kick again. So, when that avocado from Mexico is now 25% more expensive, there you go. When the gas, the cars, the fruits and vegetables that we all love and eat, well, I guess, the people who voted for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump isn't concerned about vegetables if you've seen his menu and diet. So I guess he's fine, but the rest of us, we're in trouble. And I too have been taking the same stance as Dr. Walker has made, no, this is where we are. This is what you asked for. One of the biggest searches were on Google was, what is a tariff? Another one was, can I take my vote back? I need you to be serious with yourselves. You voted for this. This is what you asked for, and this is what you'll get.
Yeah, Dr. Walker, people were concerned about the price of eggs before the election. You have a potential trade war that everyday Americans will be caught in the middle of. Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico saying, hey, if you put a 25% tariff on goods coming from Mexico, we're going to respond with retaliatory tariffs of our own. And who loses in this equation, in this fight of tariffs?
Well, the average everyday American loses, right? And then millions of individuals voted for Donald Trump when he talked about tariffs, which is basically a tax. Let's be clear about what we're talking about here. And listen, and everyone knows during the 90s, President, Clinton, signed the NAFTA, right? And we had this, since then, our relationship with our closest allies and Mexico and China and Canada has grown even stronger. Mm-hmm. And even during the Trump administration, I think they made some tweaks to that trade agreement. So we're dependent on each other. So this is how a global economy works. And so there's a failure to really have to have Americans understand how geopolitics work, particularly from an economic standpoint, right? We're not doing a good job of educating people, having them understand how exactly our economic system works, not only here in the United States, but internationally, how we dependent on each other. I think the other thing is we already know what happens when you get into a trade war. When he had got into a trade war with China, right? The tariffs during his first administration, he had to use government welfare to supplement the livelihoods of predominantly white farmers in the Midwest. So we already know what's going to happen. So, and listen, Mexico and China have made it very clear, just like China did during the first administration, if you do this, we will respond in kind, and then you will take the economy in our hemisphere. And no one wants that, but we're headed that way. He's made it clear. He promised to raise taxes, and then people voted for him. So you can't act surprised, like you said, when you can't afford a house now because all the wood and all these other costs have gone up.
Yeah, people don't think about that. I mean, we saw during the pandemic, the supply chain, how impacted it was, how just getting, goods and items to the ports and then having the ability to move those goods into grocery stores, which is why everybody was, grabbing toilet paper. We couldn't keep enough toilet paper on the shelves. People's memories are so short. Now, Donald Trump says these tariffs against Mexico are designed to stop the flow of fentanyl and other illegal drugs and to stop the flow of migration. But Sheinbaum rightfully said, what's the connection? How is that going to stop the flow of migration? It's such a non-thoughtful, non-serious concept, Chris, but yet this is, I guess, the MAGA base is buying into it because whenever he ties immigration to anything, they go crazy. So He's like, oh no, these tariffs are important because it's going to stop all these immigrants from coming, over the southern border from Mexico. But all the economists and, historians and sociologists and, finance folks and people that know, money and tariffs and taxes say that there's no relationship. But yet he's been able to sell that to his base. And People haven't seen. I don't know. The tariffs haven't started, but if you go to Starbucks right now, today, they have increased their prices by 75%. As other prices are coming down, that price gouging that Kamala Harris talked about so much. Literally a drink that I paid $5.50 for, a cup of tea, went to Starbucks yesterday, it was $6.95. I mean, just outrageous. The woman, the barista herself said, I know, this is kind of crazy.
It's racism. It is ignorance. Most of the migrants coming into the United States, coming across the Mexican border, they're not from Mexico. They're from El Salvador and Guatemala. They're from Central America. Yet you're going to put a 25% tax on Mexico, literally our next door neighbor, our ally. You know, people think of Mexico for some very racist, xenophobic reason. They think Mexico is just a hovel of dust just south of America. Mexico is a 21st century nation. They are in the G20. They have money. They have their own money. They have an economy of their own. They don't have to worry about it. That's why we're always going down there to vacation, if you never noticed it. And they actually are behaving like a 21st century nation, and they elected a woman recently. So, it's a lot of, it's just pure racism. What you think? You hear Mexico, a lot of these people who voted for Donald Trump, they hear Mexico, they think Speedy Gonzalez. Mm-hmm. That is stuff that they should be ashamed of and probably should learn more about. But this is where we are.
Yeah, when we come forward, got to talk about this ceasefire. Joe Biden, I think it was Nate Silver, I saw today, said that he should step down, that he's feeble, that he's not capable of even, governing the country for the next 45 days. And yet he is, and his administration is responsible for this major ceasefire today. Taking shots at Joe Biden on his way out. Boy, that's low. When we come forward, stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust Febreze car vent clips, featuring 3 distinct intensity settings, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing. Which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up, Oscar!
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide cleans better than the leading competitive free detergent, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues.
Plus, Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
Hey, LA, it's time to step up and be a climate change hero. Go Metro and help us shape a better future for all Angelinos. From enhancing our diverse communities to preserving our planet, Metro is dedicated to making a positive impact with every ride. Start your journey at metro.net. With reported hate crimes rising in recent years, California has responded through outreach efforts across state government and in collaboration with community-based organizations for the launch of CA versus Hate. This non-emergency, multilingual hate crime and incident reporting hotline provides an anonymous reporting option for victims and witnesses of hate acts reported in 15 different languages through the online portal and in over 200 languages when calling the hotline. Report anonymously by calling 833-866-4283. Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or online at any time at cavshate.org.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a whole lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach, transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal, prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
President Biden announced today that Israel and Lebanon's Iran-backed militia Hezbollah had agreed to a United States brokered ceasefire. Dr. Larry, what does this mean for that region? And does it have any impact on the war between Israel and Hamas?
Continue, hopefully, these peace talks in terms of between in Israel to make sure Palestinians had the kind of lives they deserve, and also these hostages are returned. So this is a good first step, but we're going to see in end of January a new administration come in, and then I'm concerned that region can continue to stay inflamed. But give the Biden Harris administration credit for negotiating this. It's not easy to do when you're essentially lame duck. So this kind of agreement is a positive step forward, and obviously we don't want to continue to see rockets flying back and forth. And we've seen some of the tremendous damage in Lebanon, and so this is a good first step. And hopefully, maybe by some kind of miracle, we get an agreement that makes sure that everyone in Israel is safe.
So, Chris, Nate Silver, who we all know, pollster, has been very vocal about the election, said recently today that Joe Biden is incompetent, incapable of leading, and that he should step aside in these last 60 days or so and let Kamala Harris take over the country. We heard a lot of that kind of, those kind of sentiments right after the loss. But what do you make of that? This, obviously Joe Biden is functioning, and the what he pointed to was the fact that Joe Biden hadn't done any interviews since Trump lost, that somehow he was avoiding the press, that he was, incapable of putting together sentences and responding to interview questions from journalists.
They just elected Donald Trump, the president of the United States, and it's Joe Biden, the one who has the inability to answer questions or put together a coherent sentence. I'm not thinking about Nate Silver. And the more time we spend thinking about Nate Silver, the more time we are missing the holidays and not actually focus on what really matters. The president of the United States has been doing his job. All 4 years he's been there. We haven't had an impeachment hearing on him being, while he's been president. He's created more than 16 million new jobs while he's been president. He's actually gotten rid of a lot of student loan debt for a lot of people I know personally. He's also codified marriage equality and interracial marriage as well. So I think he knows what he's doing. I always believe President Biden knew what he was doing, and he showed it with his first decision by picking Vice President Harris. I think the man knows what he's doing, and he's still doing this job. So yeah, I think that's crap, and I'm not really worried too much about what Nate Silver has to say. I think now, though I strongly disagree, I would like to see him actually pull a fast one and ruin all the Trump inaugural stuff, because they've been printing 47 on everything. So I would love just to ruin that for him. But yeah, no, he's not going anywhere. He is going to be president until January 20th at noon.
Yeah, it seemed like such a low blow, Professor Larry. Like all the things we have to worry about in this country, Joe Biden in the last 60 days, really? I guess these pundits and these pollsters, they are really worried about their employment. Because obviously some of them were so wrong and provided such, really bad information that America's turned off a lot of cable news and a lot of the, news sites that they were watching. And I guess folks are nervous about their own employment. So let's just say outrageous, extreme things to try to, stay in the news cycle and stay relevant.
Yeah, he's a part of that, that group of poster techno bros, right? The individuals are seem comfortable in this country in its descent into authoritarianism. So I have no idea why this comment for me. I'm totally confused why he felt like making this comment is necessary. We know President Biden is coming to the end of his term. It seems like every time somebody says something like this, there's something negotiated or something major bill or something else major he does. I don't know if it's some kind of coincidence, but an example we just talked about a few minutes ago about this deal, between Lebanon and Israel to make sure, like I said, we don't have, dozens of rockets flying between both countries is an example of what a president continues to do, even though he's in the last couple of weeks of his presidency. And look, since Silver among these other, like I said, techno, poster bros, care little for the overall well-being of America politic, but what they do care about is what you said highlighted is making sure they still have those same relationships. He's not at the New York Times anymore, so he's not the poster of the year. So and there's some questions about where he's getting some of his resources from mega super right-wing conservatives. So maybe this is a way of ingratiating himself to those individuals to let them know he's still one of their guys.
Check the source. Thank you, Professor Walker. That is exactly what we need to do in this moment, because when you hear these outrageous statements, there might be some motive behind it, like who's funding you and, whose team you're really hitting for. I want to give kudos to Biden on this weight loss medication. We know obesity is real. We know obesity kills people. We know disproportionately African Americans suffer from heart conditions, hypertension, diabetes, and many of those conditions tied to obesity. And the weight loss medication has been, for the rich and famous, for the Hollywood types. So the fact that he has, by executive order, made it available through Medicare and Medicaid on his way out is also very significant advancement for the health of our nation, and particularly health of Black folks. So I'm with you, Chris and Larry. Keep on doing what you're doing, Joe Biden. We see you. We love you. We salute you. And get some time with your family during the holidays. You've done enough for this country. Let Donald Trump deal with some of these issues, and he will see running this country when it's so divided is not for the faint of heart. All right, guys, we're out of time. Thank you so much. We'll be talking about cyber attacks when we come forward. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.